and today we're going to be continuing our talent guide series. We're going to break down all the talents inside of the Cavalry tree, is what you see right in front of you. Remember, if you have not subbed yet, please make sure you do that. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification. Make sure you get all these nice, sweet guides, all the sweet gameplay, the PvP, all the action, all the killing, all the fighting, all that good stuff. Make sure you get that done. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. So, let's jump into this. This is a guide for how to make sure that you're getting the best talents inside of each particular talent tree. And then each commander, of course, has 3 sets of talent trees depending on which combination they are. I want to go over a couple things in this video. Firstly, which talents on the Cav tree you need to be aware of and you need to have 100% every single Cav build. I also want to go into particular niche talents inside of the Cav tree so that you can build for your particular role or for your particular use. Also, I want to kind of have a combination of thought processes on how to spec Cav and skill together depending on what you're trying to do and where you're at with your account, because using the Cavalry tree versus the skill tree has always been a huge question that a lot of people have, and it depends on your role, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, but just as importantly, it depends on where you're at in the game, like what your commanders look like, what your pairings look like, things like that. So I want to make sure that you know the distinction on when you should be using maximum Cav tree and when you should be using efficient Cav tree and then having maximum skill tree. So we'll go into the actual talents first, and then as we get through these talents and you understand why I'm making the decisions I'm making, then we'll go into the actual build so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into it. The first bubble here is always a march speed buff, so that's very nice. March speed for Cavalry is very, very good. Now, the next tier of bubbles here, there's some really, really good ones that you want to always have. And there's some ones that are just, you got to have them to get to the next tier. So we'll go through them really quickly. Galea is a health bonus, which again, we all know health is very, very good for any type of commander. So this is good to have, but really what you're going to have it for is just to unlock the ability to get to Emblazoned Shield, which once all the scrolling text goes away from the screen, I hopped on my least active account and it's still scrolling like crazy. Reducing skill damage taken by 12%, Emblazoned Shield. This is a must-have talent. Every commander build for Cavalry needs to have Emblazoned Shield. 12% skill damage taken with all the skill damage out there. All the Cav and Archers and even Infantry now with Guan and Alex and all those. The skill damage taken is reduced. You got to have it. It's a must-have. So Emblazoned Shield, to get there, you've got to unlock Charge and Galea. So you got to have those anyway. Let's go over Charge really quick. This is a very important talent as well. This is effectively used through all types of fighting, open field, not rallies, but open field and arc specifically. Charge is a critical talent to have in arc, especially if you're the arc carrier, because again, you have a 50%, it's a 30% bonus when you're 50% or less on your army health. So when you're fighting and your army starts at 300k and it goes down to 150k, Charge is triggered. Then you have a 30% march speed bonus once you have this talent maxed out. This is huge. 30% all the time is very, very, very good on the battlefield, especially if you're running the arc, especially if you're just trying to get maneuverability on the field, open field wise. That's a critical talent, and again, you're going to have to unlock it anyway to get to Emblazoned Shield. So Charge is definitely a very, very good talent to have. Halberd. Halberd is a really good skill to have. You are meant to just destroy archers as a cavalry unit, okay? You've got heavy damage against archers innately, being cavalry. That's the counter to archers in the game. Then on top of that, Halberd gives you an additional 9% all damage to archers. That's skill damage, normal, counterattack, everything, okay? So you want to have this as well. Halberd is a critical skill to have. Now, Dragon Saber is a 1.5% normal attack damage buff for 3 points. To me, that's not very efficient. But again, you may need to unlock this to get to some of the other stuff, and I'm going to show you that stuff in just a second. Let's go to the next tier. Okay, so the left side here, Undying Fury, it's a rage generation buff. Normal attacks grant an additional 3 rage, up to 9 every second. So, when I say second, normal attacks basically happen every second. So if you are 10 seconds, that's 90 rage. To me, that's not a whole lot, but it's still good. Now, swarming does not help this talent because it says normal attacks. If you're getting swarmed, all you're doing is counterattacking everything else but your target hitting you. So Undying Fury will always grant you always the same amount of rage. It's not stackable with everybody who's hitting you, so something to keep in mind. All right, Undying Fury again for 3 points, and again to get here you've got to do 3 points into Dragon Saber, a point in the attack bonus here, which is good to have, and then another 3 points into Undying Fury. So it's quite a few points to get there, and to be honest with you, for me personally, this is something I tend to cut to save points to go into other things on other trees and even in the Cav tree itself. So something to keep in mind. Disarm is another really good skill to have if you've got the points to get it. Normal troop attacks have a 10% chance to reduce enemy attack by up to 20%, guys. That's huge, especially if you're building something to take on Attila Takeda. Disarm is very, very good to have. Very, very good to have. And then on top of that, when you partner this with maybe a support tree that generates rage really quickly, even the skill tree as well, causing the extra damage and rage regeneration, disarm, taking on an Attila rally or an Attila in the open field, or really anything infantry based is generally going to have high attack for infantry. You can reduce that stuff for 10 seconds, and a 10% chance does tend to proc off fairly well. So this is a good talent to have if you have the spare points to put into it. We just talked about Emblazoned Shield earlier. This is a must-have. You must have this on all of your Cav builds. It's just too good to pass up. And again, everything that you go into is going to be very, very nice to have to get there. So not a bad thing at all. Now, Equestrian Excellence. This particular talent, 99% of the time, it's a waste. It's an absolute waste. There's no reason to have it. However, if you're an art carrier in Ark of Osiris or Osiris League, this is actually a talent you may want to look into speccing into, because it says normal troop attacks have a 10% chance to increase march speed by 15% for the next 2 seconds. If you can get this to trigger right before you pick up the arc, or as you're picking up the arc, you can trigger it and then bolt. This is really good to have. This is going to give you an additional 15% on top of possibly also having charge, on top of also having all these mobility tree, talent tree stuff. So march speed here, march speed here, march speed here, march speed here. All those are really good to stack up. And again, if you have a mobility tree commander like a Double C, a Belisarius, things like that, Dragonlancer even, also will have the mobility stuff down here too. That's where they start stacking up all that mobility, okay? So Equestrian Excellence is something you can, in fact, go after. Now the top tier, the premier talent in this tree, the Cav tree, Rallying Cry. Very, very nice skill to have. Also, very hard to use maximally, if that makes sense. So it's a 15% all damage dealt, that's every type of damage, during the first 10 seconds of battle, which is basically about the time it takes to get your first skill damage off, okay? So the trigger here is, if you can get rage generated quickly enough, you might be able to get that first set of skill damage nukes off during Rallying Cry, and then that goes away, okay? Now, the way to re-engage this is to pull away from the battle. The disengage modifier will happen, which basically means all your rage goes away. If you have a disengage heal, it'll pop up as a heal. Then you can re-engage in the battle, and you'll start Rallying Cry all over again and have another 15% for 10 seconds. You can keep doing that over and over again. Very hard to pull off. Real-world fighting, very difficult to do. Even if you're very active and paying attention to your armies when you're fighting in a big clump of people, it's still very difficult to do. So something to keep in mind, but it is nice to have. That 15% damage is very, very nice to have. So first 10 seconds of entering battle, that's 15% damage. That's really good. Now, again, the thing to talk about when you're talking about, do you want to go into skill tree or do you want to go into Cav? So with Cav, you're going to tend to have less severely wounded troops because you're tankier. You're reducing the attack damage, or the attack the enemy by 20% with disarm. You've got tons of stat bubbles here for mobility, for attack, for health, for defense, all this good stuff. Attack here as well, defense. I think this is health. Yep. So you've got a bunch of different stats. The more stats you have, the better off you tend to be in the severely wounded category, okay? You won't cause as much damage unless you, again, get lucky with some skills, or, again, if you're really kind of paying attention and going in and out of battle with Rallying Cry, that kind of thing. But you will also be a little tankier, you'll survive a little bit longer, and then when you do get smashed, you will tend to have less severely wounded because you have more stats from the Cav tree than you would get from, say, the skill tree, which I'll go into the synergy here in just a second. So if you want to go that way, which again tends to be more towards the end game because stats are only as good as what you're building on the foundation of, and if you're not max tech, then having these extra few stats here and there aren't as good as maybe even getting 1 point into combat tactics or herbal medicine or defensive formation. 1 point may be better than this entire tree in the stat department. Okay, so if you're max tech, going heavy into Cav is not a bad idea unless you're trying to inflict maximum skill damage out there. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. Now, how do you build that? Well, luckily we got the new changes to to the skill tree stuff, so I can click Rallying Cry and go right to it. Now I'm going to do 4 points out of the 5 for right now, and I'm going to show you why. Again, we talked about Undying Fury. It's nice to have, but 90-ish, is that 9? Yeah, it's got to be 90 rage every 10 seconds. That's 9% of your health bar, or of your rage bar. That's not exactly mission critical, right? Like, that's not exactly like you have to have that. It's going to save you a little bit of time from getting the next skill damage off, but not really mission critical there. And again, we talked about Equestrian Excellence. You really shouldn't be using this with anybody that's got the skill damage tree, because those are really going to be reserved for mobility commanders. You're missing this 1 point of health here. However, that having 4 out of 5 points here in the Cav tree for Rallying Cry enables you to get full on Rejuvenate and full on Clarity. Now, you're giving up Feral Nature, okay? But you're getting the best of both worlds on the skill tree here. 60 Rage, whenever a skill is used, you use 2 skills per set. That's 120. And then same thing with Clarity here. After using an active skill, increases skill damage by 6% for the next 6 seconds, which basically means your second commander receives a 6% skill damage bonus, which is always good too. On the way, of course, you're getting more active skill damage and reducing the skill damage taken. And you're still getting a 12% first 10 seconds buff by going full Cav tree. Now, you can take the 4 points back out of here if you want to. That will give you 4 points to put into the rage, and then maybe putting the extra point into the health bar here. Or if you have an additional skill damage commander, you can go into latent power as well. But unless you take out the Rallying Cry buff here, and maybe even take out a little bit in disarm, so that's 4. You need to have 10 points to get to Feral Nature from this point on skill damage. That's 2, that's 3, and that's 5. That's 10 points. So again, you could also want to make sure you get this little March Speed bonus here too. Something to think about on a mina per se for your peacekeeping. So you'd have to take 4 out of here. You'd have to take 4 out of here, which means you lose disarm. And then you'd have to find 2 more points somewhere else. So that could be your 2 points March Speed here, or attack bonus here, and 1 point of March Speed. And then you could get Feral Nature as well. Just take it out of the attack altogether. You could do all kinds of things there, but getting the March Speed back over here would be fine. So that's what I'm talking about. You can either go this way, or you can go full skill damage, which for lower accounts is better because the skill damage modifiers are based off of troop count, it's based off of attack, and it's based off of just raw commander damage factor from the skill. So going heavy skill early on in the game, and even late game if you're going maximum 5 army skill damage, is not a bad idea, but you tend to take more severely wounded on the battlefield because of it. Whereas with the Cav tree, because you're getting all the skill points and the talents and all that stuff for the stats, you tend to take less severely wounded. So I hope this has been a really good breakdown for you guys. Again, must-have talents, and Blazing Shield is a must-have. Disarm is, in the right situation, a very, very good talent to have. It's one of the better talents in the tree. It's just hard to get to unless you're skimping on the skill damage tree or even the support tree. And then same thing here for Halberd. You definitely want Halberd. Either way, if you don't go to Disarm, at least get Halberd. You can skimp on Dragon Saber if you don't get Disarm or Rallying Cry. If you tend to go all the way to Feral Nature here, you don't need Dragon Saber. Definitely get Halberd, definitely get Charge and Galea, and get Emblazoned Shield, and then go heavy into the skill damage tree. We've got tons of builds on our channel showcasing what that looks like. You're going to lose a little bit of rage regeneration with not having Feral Nature, but it takes 10 points to get there. And if you want to go maximum efficiency, survivability, and movement speed, things like that, then going this route here is not a bad idea. Now, you can also put the 5th point here into Rallying Cry and take it away from Clarity or Rejuvenate. I just like to have the extra skill damage from Clarity, and the full Rejuvenate buff is always good to have. I hope this has been worthwhile to you guys. I will see you guys next time. Cheers. Have a good one. And take care. Happy Mother's Day out there, by the way. Happy Mother's Day edition of the Talent Tree Guide. So, cheers, everybody. Have a good one.